The Gormenghast Trilogy by Mervyn Peake. Book 1. Titus Groan. Swelter. The chef of Gormenghast, balancing his body with difficulty upon a cask of wine, was addressing a group of apprentices in their striped and sodden jackets and small white caps. They clasped each other's shoulders for their support. Their adolescent faces, steaming with the heat of the adjacent ovens, were quite stupefied, and when they laughed or applauded the enormity above them, it was with a crazed and sycophantic fervour. As Mr. Flay approached to within a few yards of the cluster, another roar, much as he had heard a moment or two earlier, rolled into the heat above the wine barrel. The young scullions had heard this roar many times before, but had never associated it with anything other than anger. At first, consequently, it had frightened them, but they had soon perceived that there was no irritation in its note today. The chef, as he loomed over them, drunken, arrogant and pedantic, was enjoying himself. As the apprentices swayed tipsily around the wine cask, their faces catching and losing the light that streamed through a high window, they also, in a delirious fashion, were enjoying themselves. The echoes died from the apparently reasonless bellow of the chief chef, and the sagging circle about the barrel stamped its feet feverishly and gave high shrill cries of delight, for they had seen an inane smile evolving from the blur of the huge head above them. Never before had they enjoyed such latitude in the presence of the chef. They struggled to outdo one another in the taking of liberties unheard of hitherto. They vied for favours, screaming his name at the tops of their voices. They tried to catch his eye. They were very tired, very heavy and sick with the drink and the heat, but were living fiercely on their fuddled reserves of nervous energy, all saving one high-shouldered boy, who throughout the scene had preserved a moody silence. He loathed the figure above him, and he despised his fellow apprentices. He leaned against the shadowy side of the pillar, out of the chef's line of vision. He remembered when he had first come across Swelter, how he and the chef had instantaneously entertained a mutual dislike, and how this antipathy festered. To Swelter it was irksome to see the bony, straggling figure of Lord Sepulchre's first servant in his kitchen at all, the only palliative to his annoyance being the opportunity which it afforded for the display of his superior wit at Mr. Flay's expense. Mr. Flay enters Swelter's steaming province for one purpose only, to prove to himself as much to others that he, as Lord Groan's personal attendant, would on no account be intimidated by any member of the staff. To keep this fact well in front of his own mind, he made a tour of the servants' quarters every so often, never entering the kitchen, however, without a queasiness of stomach, never departing from it without a renewal of spleen. The long beams of sunlight, which were reflected from the moist walls in a shimmering haze, had pranked the chef's body with blotches of ghost light. The effect from below was that of a dappled volume of warm, vague whiteness, and of a grey that dissolved into swamps of midnight, of a volume that towered and dissolved among the rafters. As occasion merited, he supported himself against the stone pillar at his side, and as he did so the patches of light shifted across the degraded whiteness of the stretched uniform he wore. When Mr. Flay had first eyed him, the cook's head had been entirely in shadow. Upon it the tall cap of office rose coldly, a vague topsail half lost in a fitful sky. In the total effect there was indeed something of the galleon. One of the blotches of reflected sunlight swayed to and fro across the paunch. This particular pool of light, moving in a mesmeric manner backwards and forwards, picked out from time to time a long red island of spilt wine. It seemed to leap forward from the mottled cloth when the light fastened upon it in startling contrast to the chiaroscuro, and to defy the laws of tone. This ungarnished sign of Swelter's debauch, taking the swollen curve of linen, had somehow, to Mr. Flay's surprise, a fascination. For a minute he watched it appear and disappear, to reappear again, a lozenge of crimson, as the body behind it swayed. Another senseless bout of foot-stamping and screaming broke the spell, and lifting his eyes he scowled about him. Suddenly, for a moment, the memory of Mr. Rodcod in his dusty, deserted hall stole into his consciousness, and he was shocked to realize how much he had really preferred to this inferno of time-hallowed revelry the limp and seemingly disloyal self-sufficiency of the curator. He straddled his way to a vantage point from where he could see and remain unseen, and from there he noticed that Swelter was steadying himself on his legs and with a huge soft hand making signs to the adolescents below him to hold their voices. Flay noticed how the habitual truculence of his tone and manner had today altered to something mealy, to a conviviality weighted with lead and sugar, a ghastly intimacy more dreadful than his most dreaded rages. His voice came down from the shadows in huge wads of sound, or like the warm, sick notes of some prodigious, mouldering bell of felt. His soft hand had silenced the seething of the apprentices, and he allowed his thick voice to drop out of his face. "Gallstones!" And in the dimness he flung his arms about, so that the buttons of his tunic were torn away, one of them whizzing across the room and stunning a cockroach on the opposite wall. "Close your ranks, and close your ranks in this most attentive some. Come closer then, my little seer faces. Come closer in, my little ones." The apprentices edged themselves forward, tripping and treading upon each other's feet, the foremost of them being wedged against a wine barrel itself. "That's the way, that's just the way," said Swelter, leering down at them. "Now we're quite a happy little family, most select and advanced." He then slid a fat hand through a slit in the white garment of office, and removed from a deep pocket a bottle, plucking out the cork with his lips that had gripped it with an uncanny muscularity. He poured half a pint down his throat without displacing the cork, for he laid a finger at the mouth of the bottle, so dividing the rush of wine into two separate spurts that shot adroitly into either cheek, and, so making contact with the back of his mouth, down his throat in one dull girdle to those unmentionable gulches that lay below. The apprentices screamed and stamped and tore at each other in an access of delight and of admiration. The chef removed the cork and twisted it around between his thumb and forefinger, and satisfying himself that it had remained perfectly dry during the operation, recorked the bottle and returned it through a slit into his pocket. Again he put up his hand, and silence was restored, save for the heavy, excited breathing. "Now, tell me this, my stenching cherubs. Tell me this, and tell me extra quickly. Who am I? Now tell me extra quickly." "Swelter!" they cried. "Swelter, sir! Swelter, sir!" "Is that all you know?" came the voice. "Is that all you know, my little seer faces? Silence now, and listen well to me, chief chef of Gormenghast. Man and boy, 40 years. Yes, fair and foul, rain or shine, sand and sawdust, hags and stags and all the rest of them, done to a turn and spread with sauce of aloes and a dash of prickling pepper." "With a dash of prickling pepper!" yelled the apprentices, hugging themselves and each other in turn. "Shall we cook it, sir? Shall we do it now, sir? And slosh it in a copper, sir, and stir it up? Oh, what a tasty dish, sir! Oh, what a tasty dish!" "Silence!" roared the chef. "Silence, my fairy boys! Silence, my belching angels! Come closer here, come closer with your little creamy faces, and I'll tell you who I am." The high-shouldered boy, who had taken no part in the excitement, pulled out a small pipe of knotted wormwood and filled it deliberately. His mouth was quite expressionless, curving either up nor down, but his eyes were dark and hot with a mature hatred. They were half closed, but their eloquence smouldered through the lashes as he watched the figure on the barrel lean forward precariously. "Now listen well," continued the voice.
and I'll tell you exactly who I am. And then I'll sing to you a song, and you will know who's singing to you, my little, ghastly little, ineffectual fillets.
A song! A song! Came the shrill chorus.
Firstly,
said the chef, leaning forward and dropping each confidential word like a cannonball smeared with syrup.
Firstly, I am none other than Abiathar Swelter, which means, for you would not know that I am the symbol of both excellence and plenty. Yes, I am the father of excellence and plenty. Who did I say I was?
Abiathar Swelter! Came the scream. The chef leaned back on his swollen legs and drew the corners of his mouth down until they lost themselves among the shadows of his hot dewlaps.
Abiathar,
he repeated slowly, stressing the central A.
Abiathar. What did I say my name was?
Abiathar! Came the scream again.
That's right. Abiathar. Are you listening, my pretty vermin? Are you listening?
The apprentices gave him to understand that they were listening. Very hard. Before the chef continued, he applied himself to the bottle once again. This time he held the glass neck between his teeth and, tilting his head back until the bottle was vertical, drained it and spat it out over the heads of the fascinated throng. The sound of black glass smashing on the flagstones was drowned in screams of approval.
Food,
said Swelter.
Celestial, and drink is most entrancing. Such flowers of flatulence, such gaseous buds. Come closer in, steal in, and I will sing. I will lift my sweetest heart into the rafters, and will sing you a song, an old song of great sadness, a most dolorous piece. Come closer in.
It was impossible for the apprentices to force themselves any closer to the chef, but they struggled and shouted for the song, and turned their glistening faces upwards.
Oh, what a pleasant lot of little joints you are,
said Swelter, peering at them and wiping his hands up and down his fat hips.
What a very lot of little joints. Yes, you are. But so underdone. Listen, cocks, I'll twist your grandmas so sweetly in their graves. We'll make 'em turn, my dears, we'll make 'em turn. And what a turn for them, my own, and for the worms that nibble. Where's Steerpike?
Steerpike! Steerpike! Yelled the youths, the ones in front twisting their heads and standing upon their toes, the ones in the rear craning forward and peering about them. Steerpike! Steerpike! He's somewhere here, sir! He's somewhere here, sir! There he is, sir!
Silence! Silence!
Bellowed the chef, turning his gourd of a head in the direction of the pointed hands as the high-shouldered boy was pushed forward. Here he is, sir! Here he is, sir! The boy, Steerpike, looked impossibly small as he stood beneath the monstrous monument.
I shall sing to you, Steerpike, to you,
whispered the cook, reeling and supporting himself with one hand against the stone pillar that was glistening with condensed heat, little trickles of moisture moving down its fluted sides.
To you, the newcomer, the blue mummer, and the slug of summer. To you, the hideous and insidious and appallingly cretinous goat in a house of stenches.
The apprentices rocked with joy.
To you, only to you, my cord of curdled cat bile. To you alone. So hearken, diligentiums. Are you hearkening? Are you all listening? For this is how it all goeth. My song of 100 years ago, my plaintively most melancholic song.
Swelter seemed to forget he was about to sing. and after wiping the sweat from his hands on the head of a youth below him, peered for Steerpike again.
"And why to you, my ray-raddled sunshine, Why to you alone, Taking it for granted, my dear little Steerpike, taking it for more than for most granted. And you, a creature of less consequence than stoat's blood, are so far removed from anything approaching nature. Yet tell me, or rather, don't tell me why your ears, which must originally have been designed for fly-papers, are, for some reason but unknown to yourself, kept immodestly unfurled. Why do you propose to do next in this matter? You move here and there on your little measly legs. I have seen you at it. You breathe all over me kitchen. You look at things with your insolent animal eyes. Yes, I've seen you do it. I have seen you looking at me. You looking at me now. Steerpike, what does it all mean? And why should I sing for you?
Swelter leaned back and seemed to be considering his own question a moment as he wiped his forehead with the sleeve of his forearm. But he waited for no reply, and flung his petulant arms out sideways, and somewhere on the orbit of an immense arc, something or other gave way. Steerpike was not drunk. As he stood below Mr. Swelter, he had nothing but contempt for the man who had but yesterday struck him across the head. He could do nothing, however, except stay where he was, prodded and nudged from behind by the excited minions, and wait. The voice recurred from above.
"It is a song, my Steerpike, to an unimaginary monster, just like yourself. If only you were a trifle bigger and more monstrous still. It is a song to a hard-hearted monster. So listen most affixedly, my pretty wart. Closer, closer! Can't you come a little closer to a dirtiest masterpiece?"
The wine was beginning to redouble its subversive activity in the chef's brain. He was now supporting himself almost to the whole of the while against the sweating pillar, and was sagging hideously. Steerpike stared up at him from under his high, bony brow. The cook's eyes were protruding like bloodshot bubbles. One arm hung, a deadweight, down the fluted surface of the support. The enormous area of the face had fallen loose. It glistened like a jelly. A hole appeared in his face. Out of it came a voice that had suddenly become weaker.
"I am Swelter,"
it repeated.
"Chef Arthur Swelter, cook to his lordships, board ships and all sorts of ships that sail on slippery seas. Arthur Swelter, man and boy and girls and ribbons, lots of kittens. 40 year of cold and sunny. Where's the money, thick and hairy? I'm a fairy, I'm a songster. Listen well, listen well."
Mr. Swelter lowered his head downwards, over his wine-raddled breast, without moving his shoulders, and made an effort to see whether his audience was sufficiently keyed up for his opening chords. But he could make out nothing below him saving the little sea of faces which he had alluded to. But the little sea had now become practically obliterated from him by a swimming mist.
"Are you listening?"
Yes, the song, the song! Swelter lowered his head yet again into the hot spindrift, and then held up his right hand weakly. He made one feeble effort to heave himself away from the pillar, and to deliver his verses at a more imposing angle. But, incapable of mustering the strength, he sank back. And then as a vast inane smile opened up the lower half of his face, and as Mr. Flay watched him, his hard little mouth twisted downwards. The chef began gradually to curl in upon himself, as though folding himself up for death. The kitchen had become as silent as a hot tomb. At last, through the silence, a weak, gurgling sound began to percolate, but whether it was the first verse of the long-awaited poem, none could tell, for the chef, like a galleon, lurched in his anchorage. The great ship's canvas sagged and crumpled, and then suddenly in enormousness foundered and sank. There was a sound of something spreading as an area of 7 flagstones became hidden from view beneath a catalytic mass of wine-drenched blubber.